And welcome to this Digital Camera Magazine video tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Vanishing Point tool. The Vanishing Point is a great tool for basically cloning areas within perspective. So here we have a building taken on perspective, and what we're wanting to do is just clean up the exterior of that and remove those clothes and the washing from outside the building. Once we've done that, what we're hoping to end up with is something like this. So we've removed all of those washing lines, all of the washing and a few of the lines, and we've cloned that back in with windows and brickwork that's all in perspective with the building. Now with Vanishing Point, it does take a long time to clean up, so give yourself at least an hour the first time you do it, and after that it'll probably take you about half an hour to 40 minutes to really get a good result. In this tutorial, what I'm going to do is just show you the basics, then you can work through it and really perfect the technique. So if we go back to our vanish_before.jpg, which you can find on this month's disk, and what we're going to do is just duplicate the background layer before we start. To do that, just grab the background, pull it down to the Create New Layer icon, and you'll get your background copy layer appear. Now the reason that we do this with Vanishing Point is that it doesn't have that many undos. So if you're working through, you can't just undo and go back several steps. So sometimes it's worth just having that background copy of the original there, so that once you've finished doing a few of the clones, come out of Vanishing Point, and if you've made mistakes, just clone those areas back into the image and then go back into Vanishing Point and finish off the picture. Okay, to get started, you'll find the Vanishing Point under Filter and Vanishing Point. That'll open up the Vanishing Point dialog window. Now, once you've opened that, the first thing which you need to do is to create a plane. And as default, this tool is already selected, and it's the second tool down on the left-hand tool palette. What we need to do is basically create our plane. So if we take a look at the building, and imagine we're looking at it straight on, what we want to do is just to draw a square box. But because it's in perspective, we're actually going to draw a rectangular box in perspective. So we can do that quite easily on this picture by just looking at the windows, and we can make our first point just above the top left-hand window. Just left click and you make your first point. If we drag that over to the right, and we'll make our second point above the top right hand window. Just make another click, and we've just anchored that down. Drag the mouse down to the bottom right, and we're just going to make a point just below the middle right hand window. And once we've done that, we'll suddenly see a third line suddenly appear just through the middle of our rectangle. And as we move our mouse, we'll see that our fourth point is ready. Now sometimes if you're not zoomed into the picture, it's quite difficult to see what's going on, and if we just push X, we can actually zoom in to whichever point we're trying to put into our picture. So we can see that point just moving around a little bit close. If I release X again, and we'll zoom back out of the image. So we're just going to place that just outside that window on the middle left. And once we've done that, we'll see this yellow grid appear. Now what that signifies is that our perspective plane isn't quite right. So what we're going to have to do is just to edit the plane that we have there. And once we've made that fourth point, our Edit Plane tool is automatically selected. And that's the very top tool in our tool palette here. You can switch back to that at any point just by hitting V on your keyboard. What we're trying to get is a nice blue grid here, which just shows us that everything's alright for our perspective plane. So to do this, just grab hold of one of the corners and just start to move your grid around until you see the grid change itself from yellow to blue, but you want to keep it outside of these windows and keep that perspective that we're after. You might find that it takes a little bit of time just to find the blue grid. Then after a bit, there we go, we've got a nice blue grid there, which is perfectly in perspective and ready for Photoshop to work. You might find that the grid itself is just a little bit too small and hiding a lot of the detail that you want to clone. So what you can do is just increase the size of that grid with the grid size slider, And if you just click on the arrow, you can either use the slider here just to move it up and down, or you can click straight into the little window and just type in a value. We're going to go for 200, and then that basically means that we can see everything that's going on quite nicely behind the actual grid. Once we've done that, we want to expand the grid so that it covers the entire middle building. And in the same way as we do when we're transforming any other sort of tool, all we need to do is grab the anchor points that surround the perspective plane and just drag those into position. So here I'll just grab the top of that, move it up to the top of the building, grab the ones on the side, and I can just extend those over either side of our middle building. And finally just grab the one at the bottom and I'll pull that straight down, and you can see how that's expanding over the whole building there. Now that means that we've now got our area which is ready for cloning. So once you've got your first perspective grid done, we're going to have to do each of these buildings individually because they're all on slightly different perspectives. So with an image like this, although it looks quite simple, with the vanishing point you do need to make several different grids in order to do each of the different buildings. Okay, so that's basically how to create your planes within Vanishing Point. In the next part, we're going to move on and have a look at how to actually start to clone areas of the image out of the picture.